All right, everybody, welcome back to another month's edition of our Church Ambassador Network live stream. Today we've got David Eaton from Axis.org. He's the founder of Axis Ministries out of Colorado Springs, and we're really excited that he and his team have been working on something that I think is really relevant for you all as pastors and parents. But also touches heavily on some of the work that Troy McIntosh, our director of the Ohio Christian Education Network, that he and his team have been doing. And that's everything related to cell phones. And so we're going to make this sort of a podcast style. David's got some really good, as I mentioned, resources that are coming out, but also just some information that we wanted to be able to share with you all today about what he and his team are working on, and a little bit about what Troy and his team have been working on, as there's a lot of overlap. There's a kind of a fun Venn diagram here. And David, this is one of the questions that I get regularly from parents and pastors. And one of the things that we hear all the time about the cultural catechization that's happening to the next generation in particular through the phone, through the smartphone. And so if you would, maybe before we get into some of the deep dive, give a little bit of an introduction of yourself, your team, some of what you guys do, what you focus on, and then we'll get into the topic of the day here on smartphones.
Yeah, I founded Axis 19 years ago, and we help 400,000 parents communicate and understand their 500,000 teenagers. So that's our gig. We are your research assistant. We are your back office. And, Troy's on, you're serving 200 schools at CCV. Chris, you're serving a lot of churches. I will say that for every 100 people who sign up for Axis, and everything's free, we're a Christian nonprofit, everything is free, it will be free. 56% of the people who sign up for Axis are youth workers. So that means coaches and teachers and youth pastors and pastors. So yeah, we're all about parents and grandparents, but man, we love the caring adults. We love the youth workers that surround the rising generation. And if I can continue my monologue, Axis does two things to be a research assistant. One is called culture translation, and the other one is called one conversation. Culture translation means if C.S. Lewis and MTV, if they made a baby, they would name their baby Axis. So we're looking at church mothers and church fathers who have been long dead and saying, what is the ancient truth? And then we're looking at saying, what's happening right now? What's happening on TikTok now? What's happening on Instagram now? What's happening in our kids' world now? And how do those combine? So that's culture translation. And the other one is called one conversation. It's a story. A young lady said, I've only had one real conversation with my dad. So that is not good. And her dad was a pastor. So that covers all your folks, Chris. And then her dad was also a Christian university president. So that covers the education side. So it's in Ohio too. So Cedarville. So this was Dr. Bill Brown. And then he was on, so cover Axis, he was on the board at Axis for 6 or 7 years. So I was like, Dr. Brown, what's going on? But then his daughter smiled and she said it again. And this is so poignant and powerful. She says, I've only had one real conversation with my dad, and we've never stopped having that one conversation. So parents out there, you're going to have a 50 or 60-year conversation with your kid that never stops. Grandparents, it'll be a 30-year conversation. And then, yeah, if you're a pastor, it's going to be a multi-year conversation. Youth pastor, a couple-year conversation. Teacher, it could be a 1-year or a 6-year conversation. Coach. So all these different conversations are melding together. If you believe that it's true, which it is true, that parents are the most influential force in the life of a kid, then Axis is here to be your culture translator, to be your back office to help you have that conversation. So that's Axis. That's Axis in a nutshell. That work? There's a little bit.
No, that's great.
It's a long elevator ride. So that was like, it wasn't just a couple floors we were on there. So the elevator pitch was a little bit longer than normal. We're here for you.
No, that's a really good synopsis, though. And I was gonna ask you if you didn't bring it up about Dr. Brown and the connection, because when I first heard that story about the one conversation, you guys do that so well with the dramatic pause. I only ever had one conversation with my dad. Oh, it's heartbreaking. And we never stopped having that conversation. It's just a really good framework and way to think about what we get to do as parents. And so I love that story. So if you would, maybe just share a couple of the things that you're most excited about that Axis has been working on And then we'll start to narrow in on what you guys are releasing here soon with all the research and time you spent on cell phones and everything that goes along with the questions parents get about cell phones in particular.
Well, we're having this conversation in September. It'll be, shared with all your people in September. At Access, it is smartphone September right now. So everything we're producing, so we have something called the Culture Translator. It's an email that goes to 400,000 people every single Friday, and it says, here are 3 things going on in the life of your kid. So the 3 things that we'll be talking about every week this month will be about smartphones. Of course, smartphones, like when we interview parents and we say, well, actually, I'm going to ask you that question here soon. So you just hold on. So I'm going to interview you guys. So Smartphone September is coming up. And so all of our resources surrounding that. And then even going into October is going to be about the supernatural. And so that's kind of a fun theme for us. So we'll be releasing content on miracles. And so if you're at a Christian school, so we have like a multi-part series about miracles. If you like the Bible Project, it's like the Access version of that. And so it's much more cultural references. So if you're like, we want to reverse engineer chapel this month, you could watch our series on miracles. We'll also be talking about Wednesday and when our conversation starter on YouTube. And so it's a short video. So that will be about the very, very popular Addams Family remake on Netflix called Wednesday. And then also talking about the idea of manifesting on TikTok, which is the idea of like you can bend the will of the universe to come to you, which is it was called The Secret back in the early 2000s when I was traveling and speaking. It's this idea of like, tying into the ancient belief of Atman and Brahman and Eastern religions, and you're one with everything, and you can make the universe make you rich, basically. So yeah, that would be some of the things that are coming up. But yeah, it's all about the smartphone right now.
Love it. Oh, that's exciting.
Oh, and I was going to ask you a question. Here's the question, Troy. Here's the question, Chris. You guys are in this space. You're big time pastors, youth pastor space. You're leading schools, leading WC. Where one of our team members came from back in the day, and good old Worthington. What do you think are some of the challenges that parents and their teenagers and pastors and their teenagers and youth pastors and Christian school administrators and their teenagers are facing now more than ever? Give me a couple of answers. I want to hear them.
I'm going to kick that to Troy because I feel like I've been dominating so far, and I want him to chime in here. So, Troy, what are you hearing from your 200 plus Christian schools and school leaders and teachers and all the parents? I mean, you're approaching what 60,000 kids now that you're serving through those Christian schools. What are you hearing in response to David's question there?
Yeah, well, it's an important question, obviously, and I think what the challenge that parents and pastors and even kids are experiencing is somewhat tied to the issue of smartphones. It's not exclusive to smartphones, but certainly smartphones is a carrier from it. And that is, how are you to help young people understand the influence of popular culture on their lives? How are Christians to think about and engage with all of these ideas that are so readily available to them through this media, through television, through any of the popular media, music, film, any of these things? Because those cultural ideas are so pervasive, it's easy for Christian kids to absorb them and not even realize it, to not think about it. And so helping them to understand how to engage ideas, how to build a worldview so that when they see ideas that run counter to a biblical worldview, that they recognize it immediately and they're able to call it out and they're able to understand it in a way that allows them to live in the world but not be of it. I think that's a huge challenge for young people today.
Yeah, actually, a fascinating answer. We did our third impacts survey at Access. I'll share my screen. It might come up for those of you who are watching, but this is our third one over the last 5 years. And we said, what do you care most about? And here are the top 6 things. It's cultural trends, and then how those cultural trends come through social media, how that social media comes in through screen time, how that screen time impacts mental health, sexuality, and then spiritual growth. So it's being able to, and these are, we did this is over 1,100 responses, so we got our confidence interval in the right spot for that. So yeah, it's culture and phones and et cetera, and that's why we've dedicated a whole month to it. So yeah, those are some things that are facing. Chris, do you have an answer for it? Even though I just gave away some of Access's answers.
No, that's and directly in alignment. I was at a church yesterday, doing sort of a 3-part seminar series for their congregation, and then stayed overnight and did some work. I guess that was Sunday, and then stayed overnight and did some work with a group of pastors on Monday morning. And all of the questions were related primarily to I mentioned cultural catechesis a moment ago, which I just stole shamelessly from Christopher Watkins and his book, Biblical Critical Theory. But all the questions are related to my kids, whether they realize it or not, are developing a worldview and adopting things from this buffet that they're receiving through their smartphones, through social media, they're just picking things that they like the sound of and that feel good. And they're not even really critically thinking about the impact of what this worldview means for how they live out their life, much less how it coincides or contradicts their Christian beliefs. And so I think that's the main thing that we see a lot of people concerned about with the smartphone is the voices that are being promoted and that the kids are listening to through the phone are difficult to control and oftentimes not leading in the same direction as parents, mom and dad, are struggling to disciple their kids. So we get that question regularly, and the title of your caught my attention. The title of your talk today, as we kind of put that out to people, was why when I should get my kids a smartphone is actually the wrong question. And we do hear that all the time. What's all my kids' friends have phones and they're pressuring, they want one. And so we talked about that a little bit yesterday with the pastors. And several of them, one in particular, I thought this was a great response, but one in particular said, I've never met a parent who looked back, who has older kids, who looked back and said, I wish I would have gotten them a phone sooner. But he's counseled plenty of parents who maybe got their kids a phone young, and then it was, they weren't prepared for it as parents were as kids. But you're actually saying, well, that's actually the wrong question. So maybe we can start there. Tell me a little bit about why that's the wrong question and what do you recommend instead?
The question is, when should I get my kid a phone? It's the number one question we get asked. It's the wrong question because it assumes two things that are false. So the first thing that it assumes is false is that your kid doesn't already have access to a phone. So I don't care, you guys, you're in Ohio, you're better than everyone else. There are no phones in schools. I get it. You took the anxious generation and John Haight's work and said, we're going to make it into a law, which if you look at the Old Testament, laws work, right? So laws change people's hearts. I mean, isn't that's why we don't need Jesus anymore. I don't know if that's my sarcasm's going to come through, but it's there. It's dripping.
We heard it. It was good.
No, it's great. So you put this law in place, which is actually wonderful because I can't imagine how hard it would be to be a teacher with kids who are just looking at their phones the whole time. Okay, so assumes one thing that is false. The first thing assumes is false is your kid doesn't already have access to a phone. And so here's the scary statement. Your kid is only as safe as their friends' phones.
That's good.
And it's not like, I mean, my mother-in-law has this plaque. It says, prepare your child for the path, not the path for your child. And as soon as you think that you can make your kid completely safe, which of course we want our kids to be safe, but the way that we make them safe is through our relationship by cultivating wisdom and character inside of them so that when they come across something, when their friend says, look at this on their phone, then they have a chance to understand how to respond. And I think the challenge with this, so I was at a Christian school, a very amazing classical Christian school. People were wearing bow ties there who were teachers, and they were reading the primary resources. If you guys are watching it, Troy has a wonderful smirk right now. And I love these classical schools. They're amazing. I mean, you're jumping into the primary resources, like I said. And so, as schools, we're like trying to help our kids cultivate wisdom and character and being and a good worldview, as we would say. And so they had prepared at this school because they, like what you do, like back in the day, it was all the conversation around sexting, and it was around Snapchat and disappearing images, and how, it's going to be there forever, even though it disappears online. So there's always these messages go back and forth. And so, well, they had taken care of that, but the conversation they didn't have was when junior high boys were taking pictures of girls, their faces, and using AI to put nude images on the rest of their body. And so then what do you do when that gets out? And then, but it's not really the girl's body, but it is the girl's body, but it isn't. So what are you supposed to do? Well, we didn't see that one coming. And so here you have junior high boys leading the way in that conversation. And then what does the school do when the boys are like, we're sorry, we were just messing around on the internet at 11 o'clock at night? So do you kick the kids out of school? Do you put them on a sex offenders list? How do you pursue justice in that situation? So when should I get my kids a phone? The first thing it assumes is they already, they don't already have a phone. The second thing it assumes is that you have to give them 100% of a phone. So you don't have to do that. And what's interesting is there are multiple different phones that are out there. So whether you give them your old iPhone or an Apple Watch or a Gav phone or a Pinwheel phone or a Trumi phone or a Wise phone or a Light phone, or try to get a flip phone, which is just as expensive as a smartphone, these are all options that you can start with. And so they all have different rules of engagement. And so just because it's August and your kid's going back to school in late August or September, or just because it's their birthday or just because it's Christmas, doesn't mean you have to buy them $1,000 iPhone. And it doesn't mean that when you give it to them, that you give it to them in a box that's wrapped in cellophane and says, here's your brand new device. Welcome to all of the worst things about human nature and many of the best things about human nature on this pocket glowing rectangle. Okay, so I know that was a long response, but those are two things. So when should you get your kid a phone? I'll give you a couple answers to this. If you're wait until 8th, it's a group out of Texas. They say wait until kids goes into 8th grade. And so one of the things that you do is you get a cohort of other parents to all sign a pledge and say, we're going to wait until 8th grade. Well, that's great because you're not doing it earlier. That could be a challenge though, because what if you're a two-family household? Or what if your kid's in team sports and the coach requires stuff? Or what if you're in these other areas where you just feel pressure and it's actually like you need to get it for them? So wait until I would say that. John Haidt, I always say his name wrong. Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation, 2024, big book. He says, don't get your kid a phone until they're into junior high. No, he says high school. And he says, don't get them social media until they're 16. So still, this begs the question of how do you give them the phone when they get it? Do they just get it and be like, okay, I'm going to have social media. I get to have 4 different social media accounts. How am I working through all this different stuff? So yeah, I would say those are other things that are out there. What Access would say, and what Access has said, and I have a resource. If you go to access.org, we have a free resource called the Everything Smartphone Guide. It will answer this question. And really, it goes back to what we call the 8 smartphone domains. And we can get into this, Troy and Chris, if you want to. It says what matters is not when, but how. How do you get them a phone? The Gene Twenge would say, don't call it a kid phone, call it a basic phone. We call it a first phone. And so at some point, you'll be able to get your kid a first phone. And so, I mean, there are options in the market. For example, it'd be the Gab phone, or it'd be the Trumi phone, or it'd be the Pinwheel phone, or it would be the Bark phone. These are all Android devices with their own OS. And so when you open the phone out of the box, instead of being like, you have to restrain the phone, you actually have to get to release the phone. Now, if you get your 16-year-old one of these phones, they will be made fun of because they are designed for a younger audience. And so you have to remember the sensitivity. If you're a parent or a grandparent who's listening to this, remember the street cred that came from the first car that you got to drive. Actually, Troy, what was your first car?
That was a Pontiac J2000, 1980.
How did it feel? Did you feel cool with that, or did you feel like made fun of?
That was probably a middling car for the time.
Okay, nice. You didn't want a truck?
I grew up in the city. Trucks weren't quite the thing.
Chris, what was your first car?
I grew up in Colorado, so I did want a truck. So I bought my youth leader's Toyota SR5 that had spacers and big mud tires on it, and we would take it up to the hills and go camping and mudding, and we had a great time. So I love that truck.
Oh man.
It
Do
was
you still
good.
do you still pine for that truck every now and then, or is it kind of like that was just now you're a dad?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about the Honda Odyssey now. So all the gadgets, all the technology, all the comfort, I'll take it.
So that first car is often like the first phone. And so your kids will, you have to hold that with sensitivity. You also have to hold that if they don't get a phone until later on, they will be made fun of and they'll be left out of conversations. And you'll be like, good, we want to build resilience in you. We want you to know what it feels like to be left out. We want you to know what it feels like to have analog, important face-to-face relationships. Okay, cool. But still, it comes at a cost. People be laughing about something. There'll be some music that they haven't heard of. There'll be some kind of TikTok trend that they won't know about, and they'll be left out. Okay, so you get your kid a phone, it's all about the how. And then when you give them their first phone, there are first phones that you get to have. So, what I recommend, I mean, in a perfect world, because I know people are listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't live in a perfect world. Or I give them a kid a phone and it's like Pandora's box is open. That's okay. We can get to an answer to that. But the first thing is like get them one of these first phones and have them share it like a landline and like we might have grown up with, and have them only be able to communicate with a select group of people, maybe you and your spouse. And so, and by the way, that's what we did with my kids. And so they can only get text messages and phone calls from my wife and I. However, they have gotten over 600 different text messages from strangers. Now they can't see them, but I can see them. And so just know that when you get your kid a phone, it's going to be incoming. And so it's not like they're out there looking for darkness. And some of the text messages are innocent, but a lot of them are like phishing for your kid. So, I mean, so you could get them a landline, you get them a kid's first phone, or you give them your old iPhone. I think there's also kids' watches or first watches that are kind of cool. And so that's a great first step. There's a lot of pressure right now with school shootings that you're like, I want to know where my kid is. There's a lot of pressure with travel sports. I want to know where my kid is. A lot of pressure with two household families. I want to know where my kid is. It's just kind of nice to know where your kid is and they can have contact with you. Maybe you want to leave the house and leave them at the home so you could go on a date and not have to hire a babysitter. And so you want to know they can have access to you because you're leaving them at home and they're younger. So I would say kid's first phone for almost like a landline, then move to a kid's watch or a first watch, then move back to first phone. At some point you might want to jump straight into the Apple Watch zone because that comes with street cred and it's limited use on certain apps, but it's still really powerful and you can still make phone calls. Eventually they're going to want to have that iPhone. And so the entire time you're saying, look, my goal is for you to have freedom. You don't want your kid whispering, saying, I can't wait till I leave the house so I can do whatever I want. That's not the kind of heart we want to have cultivated that loves truth, goodness, and beauty for my classical schools out there, or have cultivated Christian worldview for other Christian schools or for youth groups who are just like, hey, we want our kids to have, strength and hold on to their faith and understand what it is. So yeah, you don't want them whispering that. You want to say, look, I want you to have freedom with this thing. That just means I want you to understand how it works and how we can be on the same team as a family. So and then the 8 domains help outline how to be in agreement, because if you're from different generations, by definition, you are with your kid, you just assume completely different things about the phone. And getting through those assumptions is important.
That's good. Troy, you just did a podcast with Jonathan Haidt and talked through some of that anxious generation stuff. And David, I really liked excuse me, how is more important than when, because even, my kids are 9, 7, and 4. They're not yet begging for the phone, but some of their young friends are starting, mom and dad, whether it's split household or activities, extracurricular or whatever, they're starting to think about giving their kids phones. And so we know the question's coming. So we've been thinking about this as well. And the reason how is more important than when resonated with me is we were at a conference, and Josh McDowell was one of the speakers there, and he had shared that the average age of exposure to pornography is now 8 years old, and most of the time it's coming through their friend's phone. It's not them looking something up, it's coming through their friend's device. And I wonder if, and maybe you've done some research on this, but I wonder if your kids have a phone that has some level of access, and you've thought through how to give them their first phone, that they're less likely maybe to go need to use or want to be on their friend's phone. Now, at some level, to your point about they're not going to see the latest TikTok trend, they're not going to have the latest music video, whatever the case would be, they're still going to see the gap. They're going to feel that gap. But I wonder if that does give you as the parent a little bit more control as you're introducing them to this space than even just saying no phone. Because if they just say no phone, they're going to go get on somebody else's. But if they've got something that they can communicate with that you're able to channel, maybe that provides another layer of safety and protection, if you will. Troy, from some of the conversation that you had with Jonathan Haidt, tell me a little bit about how that went. And I'm sure there's a lot of concurrence here with what David was just sharing, but love to hear some of what you guys talked about with your schools.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure many of you out there have read Anxious Generation by Dr. Haidt, because it's been on the New York Times bestseller list for months on end. And it really was a seminal work. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, it puts data and research to what so many people intuitively knew about the effects of cell phones on kids. And he really traces sort of the rise in cell phone use and correlates it to the rise in so many other social problems that our students are experiencing. Depression, poor school performance, decreased social interaction with peers. And so, what he's doing right now, he will tell you that his sole professional goal right now is to work to get as many schools cell phone and screen free as possible. And so that's what he's committed to doing. And he's doing a really good job with that, because he really was the impetus for us making that push here in Ohio. So I think David hinted at something that in Ohio we were able to persuade the General Assembly to essentially require public school districts to ban phone usage during the school day. So beginning this school year, every public school in Ohio is technically cell phone free. And that did not apply to private schools. So we voluntarily started and created what we've called a covenant for phone-free Christian schools. And you can find that on our website. It's just osen.org. You can search for the covenant on there. And if you are a parent of somebody at a Christian school in any state in the union, you might want to encourage your school leadership to take a look at that covenant and become a signatory, because we are trying to make this kind of a movement among Christian schools. But one of the things that I want to emphasize from an educator standpoint is, with all of, and there are certainly many examples of content problems with cell phones, the access to pornography, the access to any number of sites that would have, ideologies that run completely contrary to what as Christian parents we would want for our kids, right? That is a problem with cell phones. But I think there's a hidden problem with cell phones and technology that we often overlook. And that is just the very nature of the media itself is problematic in so many ways for kids and their development. And by that, I mean the type of brain that it requires and the neural connections that it requires to scroll through a cell phone and spend 5 seconds on this site, scrolling to the next one 5 seconds later, 15 seconds later, moving on to the next piece of text or site, is completely different than the neural connections that is required for reading a 300-page novel. And so what we're seeing is it's affecting students' abilities to learn, to engage with deep content, because the internet doesn't ask them to do that. The internet asks them to interact with a lot of content on a very superficial level. But deep learning requires you to engage with content at a deep level over long periods of time. And kids today are missing that opportunity. And you see that, I think, if you interview any junior, senior level English teacher, they will tell you that the ability of students to read extended pieces for understanding is dramatically lower than it was 15, 20 years ago. And that's not even related to the content that they're consuming. It's the mode, the media that they're consuming. If you look at, Marshall McLuhan's work on the medium being the message, that's really just as much of a problem with the screen technology today than the actual content.
Which is interesting because though we've just banned cell phones from all the public schools, how many of those public schools are teaching throughout the day on digital devices? So there's still a whole issue of the mode of learning that's happening in those classrooms, even if the cell phone has been banned.
That's why bow ties should be mandatory. And school education. Troy, where's your bow tie? I mean, I thought that you were a Christian school administrator. There's no such thing as a headmaster without. Oh, I'm making fun of.
That's good.
Again, but yeah, I think Marshall McLuhan, Neil Postman, this idea of what is the actual medium doing to us? What is the paradox of choice doing to us? What's the lack of attention span? And then just always go back to like, it's not just a kid issue, it's a human issue. And so you might have an iPad kid in your house who, as soon as, it's grandparents are notorious for this. It's like, oh my goodness, the grandbaby's born. I don't even care about, devices, but I'm going to send an iPad to this 1-year-old because I want to see him and FaceTime him. And that's really cool. But what is that doing in their brain? It's the same thing for us adults. I mean, we all know what our app is. What's that one app that is just your dopamine pit that you feel kind of nasty after you look at it, and it's giving you the variable reward response? Hey, I want to hit a couple big things here. So, so how do you get your kid a phone? I think there was a story, a young lady, she's in my youth group. I was a part-time youth pastor back in the day. Her mom took her phone away, and she said, the stricter the parent, the sneakier the teenager. And such a great line. Love working with high school students because they're so smart. And I was like, that is so true and so false at the same time. So the truth is that if it's control begets control. And so if you try to outsmart your kid, they will outsmart you. So as soon as you snatch that smartphone away, just know if the relationship's not there, if the why is not behind it, you have just started a war. And it's a war that you will lose as a parent. Because having a teenager live in your home is like having at-home tech support, and their friends will help them. So that's the first thing. The second thing about how it's false is that it assumes that there's an adversarial relationship. And so you have to work to build the heart connection with your kid. And so as I said, the stricter the parent, the sneakier teenager to a grandpa, and he's like, oh, that just depends. Are you raising a sin concealer or are you raising a sin confessor? And so if you've modeled confession, if you model connection, then yeah, it's a confessional family, and grace is the center of it. Oh, Troy wants to say something. Say it, Troy.
Well, one of the best pieces of advice I got as a young parent was, my job as a parent was not to control my child. It was to develop somebody who could exercise self-control themselves. And I think that's what you're getting at, right? If our students are capable and being trained to exercise self-control in their own life, then the access to a cell phone becomes far less dangerous to them.
Yeah, self-governance, right? And self-awareness that leads to self-governance. But you still have to have, the goal of the phone is to override those systems. And that's the hard thing. So let's say that you start with like, I love you. We're on the same team. I'm excited for you to have this phone. It's going to help so many great things for you. There's also so many things that are kind of dangerous in the space. So as your parent, I'm raising an adult, I'm not raising a kid. I want to see you be in the spot. So let's get on the same page. So how do you do that? You go to access.org and you get the Everything Smartphone magazine or thing. And look, you go there, it's free. PDF, download PDF and print the PDF, download the PDF and delete the pages you don't want, keep those. Send it to all your people at your church, send it to all people at the school. Go to Amazon and you can have Amazon printed off and ship it to your door for like 10 bucks. We make no money off of this. We're just here to support you. At the beginning and the end, we talk about the 8 domains of the smartphone. And I want to hit you with those right now because this is about the how, not the when. And so the how side of it, there's 4 things that are analog, there's 4 things that are technical. The 4 things that are analog is non-negotiables, money, time, and location. As a parent, you have assumptions about this, and your kid has a different assumption about that. So for you to write it down and say, these are non-negotiable. Porn is always wrong. Sneaky apps are always wrong. Texting and driving is always wrong. Whatever your things are, you know what they are. We have some suggestions for this and there. And so, because your kid is not going to assume that. Dating apps, bullying, abusive language. So those will all be kind of non-negotiables. Those will be like hard ethical things to express in writing ahead of time. The second thing is money. These phones cost $1,000. Who pays for it up front? Who pays for it when it breaks? Who pays for the apps that are on the phone? Big conversations. If your kid buys the phone with their own hard-earned money because they work at Chick-fil-A and it's their pleasure, does that mean that they get to use their phone whenever they want to because it's their phone? No, it's their phone, just like their room is their room. Still part of your household, okay? And you're still guiding them in the process. So that's non-negotiables and money. And these are all going to come with so much emotional pain because it's just like, well, if I pay for my $1,200 phone, can't I use it? No. But if you buy it and they break it, oh, interesting. So the third thing is all about location. Can they have the phone in the bathroom? Can they have the phone in the shower because it's waterproof? Can they have the phone at church? Can they have the phone at school? Can they have the phone in their bedroom? There's conversations that Height would bring up about, not getting enough sleep that our brain needs and people texting you and what that does to the developing brain. Okay, so location is there. Can you have it at the dining room table? Can you have it in the car? Can you have the AirPods in so I don't know what you're listening to? Then the next thing is like, okay, so you can have it in these locations. Can you have it 24 hours a day? Or is there a limit to it? Or are you going to be a punitive, dictatorial, totalitarian parent who says, well, I'm going to do screen time. So you only get 15 minutes of Snapchat a day. You only get 10 minutes of TikTok a day. And if you get on my wrong side, I'm just going to shut it off on you. Oh boy, you just created a war. And so how do you get the balance right? How do you get buy-in for that? So we talk about where you would start with that and limiting those things. We talk about what the middle ground is, and then the final state. The final state is like, hey, you get to decide if pornography is good or bad or not because you have a phone and you're going to be on your own. We hope you see that it is evil and that it will destroy your future relationships, and it's actually bad for the world. It's bad for your heart and it's bad for your brain. But when you're 23 years old living on your own, I guess that's up to you. And I just would hate for you to be trapped in that addictive state. So, porn is hard, but that's what we're talking about. Money, hey, you have to pay for the whole thing. Location, hey, you can have it whenever you want. It's on you all the time. Or you can choose to be separated from it. And then time, you can have it on the entire time and what you have on the apps. So those would all be ethical, philosophical. You don't have to have a phone to talk about those things. The other 4 things are internet, app store, texting, and social media. And when your kid first gets a phone, I personally think no internet, no app store, no texting, and no social media. Oh my goodness. Well, why would I even want a phone, Dad? Well, yep, that is a good question. What is the phone for? So I think with the internet, you open that up, but that's hard. And so you can have apps that help monitor it, but that becomes a full-time job for you as a parent. So the internet is like, but if you get an iPhone coming out of the gate, it has it on there and actually shutting off Safari and then shutting off the app store so they can't download Chrome or these other browsers or a VPN. Oh my goodness, we're talking about, these are hard conversations, but these are important. So pastors and youth pastors are listening to this. Like, the phone is bigger than the car, and it might even be bigger than puberty. and these
Mm.
are massive transitions in your kid's life. So that is that's huge. The next one is the App Store when you have it on, because the App Store gives you access to these other browsers and these other things, and even into gambling apps. I mean, it's just every app has a purpose, and they're not always our best interest at heart, especially those free ones with the ads on it.
Mm.
Texting, you can shut off texting, but that's hard. I got my kids a phone and they got 600 text messages from strangers in the first 3 months. And I was able to block it because I got a first phone. But if you get an iPhone, they're just going to be like, hey, I didn't see you. What's your name? And they're going to be like, who's this? Whose phone is this? And it's like, oh, my name is, and they'll send a picture of a woman. I mean, I don't know if you guys get that, Troy and Chris, but I get these weird phishing texts about once a week, and I'm like, okay, delete and unsubscribe or whatever. It's like they got my number from a random database and they're going after me. And then social media, there's just so many rules of engagement. But you want your kids to have social media. But John Haidt says it's really bad for women and for men. So what are you supposed to do with your kid? Just never have them have social media? Well, they want it, and their coach might require it. So I
Mm.
would say, get one social media at a time. That's just going to be a conversation. Maybe they'll let you follow them. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll get a hidden account. Maybe they'll maintain their account from their friend's phone. These are all situations, Instagram, Finstagram, and so this is why Access is here for you, because that's going to be changing. And so how does that work out? But, on a sweet level, your kid gets a social, you're like, yes, you can have Instagram. Yes, I care who you follow. Why would you follow a stranger? Most kids do not post on social. They just use it for intake. I think that's like over 80% of the time. And just like Chris and I want to be professional baseball players when we were kids, I don't know if you want to be an astronaut or but I was like, I'm gonna play in Major League Ball. Did you have one of those pipe dreams, Chris?
I was told from a young age that I did not have the genetics to be professional anything. So just to enjoy the athletics while I was in school and have fun with that. But there was never allowed to elevate that to the level of professional dreams, which I appreciated mom and dad for setting me straight on that early.
So I know when you were 7, you were dreaming of leading the church network at CCD. Oh, that was the dream. And you saw it. I mean, like, look at that. Look at the treasure in heaven piling up. So uh, so that, kids want to be influencers now. So the sweet story is the mom, she's got a 14-year-old who gets Instagram. They have a birthday party. You can only invite so many kids to the birthday party. The daughter wants to post a picture on Instagram of all the kids who came to the birthday party. And the mom says, no, we're going to post a picture of you and your cake. Because the instant that you post that, it's all the kids who weren't invited get to see it. They get to feel left out. And all of a sudden, that was just a beautiful moment of wisdom from a parent.
Mm.
So those are 8 different domains. I also just want to hit I'm going to make this very brief. I think the 4 conversations that we have around it is that the phone and technology is not neutral. And as Christians, our worldview, our philosophy, our theology is that God didn't make a neutral world. He made a very, very good world that we create and craft. And part of that creation is technology. And yes, will we make an atomic bomb and blow someone up with that technology? We will. Will we make a phone that makes people addicted to like these dopamine triggers? We will. So we live in a very good world that's become cursed. And then as Christians, we're a part of the redemption. And so how can we redeem it? So nestling the phone in that space of wonder and awe and celebration, and then also saying, yeah, and this is how it's rotten. This is how it's broken. This is where it's rusty. This is where it's, bad for us. And how can we redeem it as a family is a great first conversation. The next conversation is the philosophical one of teleology. What is it for? What's the purpose of something? And so the Bible is all about faith, hope, and love. And so faith, hope, and love, cool. Love, faith, hope, and love. But what's the opposite of faith, hope, and love? Well, psychologist Dan Allender would say betrayal, powerlessness, and shame. And so there are so many ways that phones can connect us and are just amazing for navigation and to listen to music and have access to podcasts, and the democratization of music and information and news are so fascinating, and to connect with grandparents and parents and friends and share funny jokes and make great media. Those are all really positive things. But there are so many things that the phone can do that are just the worst. And so to say, what is it for? and say, is this fostering connection or not? Is this fostering, is it a good tool or not? And how are we using it as a tool? So that's the second conversation. What is it for? The third one is driver's ed. And so look, it's like, I'm not going to give you the keys to the lifted youth pastor's truck without making Chris go through a test and a class and 50 hours of driving and driving some of those hours at nighttime. And so these are ways where you go through a journey, and like, it's like, we're on a journey of trust with a destination of independence. And so here's this phone, and and so I hate the situation. I could use Snapchat because that was a big fight back in the day, but it could be TikTok. And so a kid really wants TikTok, and their parents say, you will never, ever, ever have TikTok. Really? Is that what you want to say, folks? What I would recommend saying is saying, this is who I want you to, this is what I want to see in you to have a TikTok account. I want to see this character in you. I want to see your ability to have self-awareness, to self-govern, to be under authority, to be in community, to, we're made for community. We're better in community than we are in isolation. And so, yeah, and then like, I want to have a conversation with you, one conversation that's open-ended about this, so that you're not trying to sneak a TikTok account, or, so it's trying to bring that balance to it. Now, this app is not designed to be balanced. So again, the first conversation is about the gospel, how we live in a very good world that's cursed, how to redeem it. The second one is about purpose. What is the phone for? Third one is this driver's ed mentality of like, yeah, I don't want to be in the passenger seat forever. That's called being a bad parent. So I want you to be able to drive, but we're going to do this incrementally. And the last one is about trust. And how do we build trust and being on the same page? And so one of the ways that you do that is by a phrase that you get to say over and over again. Sure, say I love you. I hope you mean that. But say you can tell me anything. You can tell me anything. You can tell me anything. You want them to bring it to you first. And you want to have that conversation. You want to have that heart connection. You want to be on the same page. You want them to say, Dad, someone just showed this to me. Mom, I just saw this happen. Mom, I just looked for this and I feel stuck. I feel trapped. Instead of them feeling like, oh, now I'm going to damn you or condemn you or shame you, they know that you will embrace them and say, let's get healthy. Let's find some good boundaries in this space. And so building on that trust. And here's the deal. You can tell me anything. You can tell me anything. You can tell me anything. So Chris, say this to your kids all the time. I'll say this to my kids all the time. Then they're going to tell us something. Then they have to take step 2. Step 2 is to practice your I'm not shocked face. And so you're like, oh my goodness, I did not see that coming. And you might feel shame towards yourself or self-hatred or some other hard things in that space. And you don't want to be in that area. And then, so you can tell me anything, practice your I'm not shocked face, and then be prepared, because at someday it'll shift to where they tell you everything. So you can tell me anything moves to you can tell me everything. And you still have to practice your I'm not shocked face, as my friends would say, because all of a sudden you're like, whoa, you're like a 27 right now, and we're still having this one conversation. And that's a pretty tough moral dilemma. I would really love to call your boss and talk to them about what just happened at work. And you're like, no. Or I'd really like to tell you what to do with this romantic relationship that you're in. Oh, you're not going to church. Oh, but you still believe in Jesus, but you're not in community. Or what do you, you're using substances that way? Oh, you're reading really hard books about deconstructing, and you're really challenging my position on women in church. Oh, you're really challenging my position on purity culture from back in the day. Oh, you're really challenging the marriage that your mother and I have. Oh, you're really challenging this. And like, oh yeah, these are areas I didn't really want to talk about. You're really challenging how I was parented. Oh, I feel threatened to be cut off from my grandkids because we are voting for different political parties. Oh, well, these are hard, but they're talking. And so you want to keep that one conversation going. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. When should you get your kid a phone? I don't care when, I care about how. And just know they already have access to a phone, and you don't have to give them 100% usage to the phone. What are the 8 different domains? 4 of them are philosophical. on non-negotiable money, location, time. 4 of them are technical and internet, app store, texting, and social media. And you have artificial intelligence that is sneaking in, so maybe we have to add a 9th category. And then what are those hard conversations to have? Be a parent who celebrates technology first, then grieves, then redeems it. Be a parent who cares about the purpose behind the technology. Be a parent or youth pastor or church leader or school administrator who cares about creating a structure that leads to independence and freedom, and cast the vision, because your kid will rise to the occasion most of the time. If not, you might have to have boundaries there while they're still in the house. And 4th, it's all about that heart connection, that trust. All right, that's my monologue. There you go. You will talk more about the phone and technology than you will talk about anything else as a parent. I think you should have lots of sex talks too. You'll have a lot of those romantic conversations, friendship conversations. But the phone is just so amazing. So amazing. And it sure is great to say, all right, we're going to outlaw it in schools. And what that does is it puts it back in the parents' hands and says, you get to disciple, you get to mentor, you get to guide, you get to walk alongside, you get to walk with your kid in those spaces.
That's so good. I had not ever thought about it through the lens of the driver ed, David, but when you made the comment that putting a phone in the hands of your kids is way more dangerous than putting them behind the wheel of the car, that is such a good mentality to have for pastors and parents as they're thinking about how to navigate this, to elevate it to that level of caution and that level of training that is necessary. So really good stuff. I took a ton of notes. Thank you. Appreciate it. Troy, any final comments, or David, any final access.org? I know we can find all the resources. Anything final that you want to make sure that the audience knows before we wrap for today?
I'll share, and then I want Troy to have the last word. So there's so much room to be in a position of fear or anger with the phone. Resist that. Be in a position of joy. It's so cool. It's so cool. Celebrate what's great about it. And then you can talk about the things that aren't great and kind of the deviation from the edges on that. So yeah, it's like a car or car keys. It's like a gun on some level. It's like whatever. It's like a knife. You don't, like you don't let your kid, oh, here, chop a tomato with this really sharp knife unless you walk through it. And so you want to be in that space, but to be from that position of joy. And then for all of you Ohio churches, we love you. We love what you're doing. We love that you love the rising generation. All of you Christian schools that are out there, all 200 of you with all the 60,000 kids. Man, we are here for you at Access, and anything we can do. We're a nonprofit. We follow Jesus. All the resources are free. We just want to help. We want to do some of this dirty work of the research and the background, so that you, as you're interacting face to face with parents and their kids, you connect with their heart. You help bring them back into the richness of the gospel and the meaning of life and the connection and the redemption that we get to participate in as Christians. So go to access.org. Great Start is our culture translator email that comes out every Friday, or our Parents Guide to Teen Slang is hilarious. Print it off for your school, or grab this Everything Smartphone resource. We are here for you. Over to
Troy. Troy, final thoughts?
Well, certainly what David said, I would echo completely. And, I think we want to leave space for the Holy Spirit to work here, right? If your child is a believer and possesses the Holy Spirit in their lives, then you want the Holy Spirit to be the one that ultimately guides and leads and teaches your child. And so you want to leave space for that and for the Holy Spirit to be working in your life and leading and guiding you as a parent, but also leading and guiding your child as they learn to engage. I mean, there are every generation has their challenges and their threats to one's spiritual life. This is the one that we live in the 21st century. And so God's not surprised by the explosion of screens and technology. And he's certainly capable of leading and directing us as parents and our children as well.
That's so good. Yeah, the entire time you were sharing, both of you, I was thinking about the difference between information and wisdom. And there's plenty of information at the fingertips of our kids. part of what we get to do as parents is through the Holy Spirit inculcate wisdom. And how do you interact with all of that information in a way that is self-controlled and Christ-centered? And this has just been really good. So appreciate you both. Thank you for your ministries. David, we're really excited to have Brad with us at the Essential Summit. He's going to be doing our first breakout session along with a couple others on raising kids in exile. And for those of you who don't know, Brad G, is it G or Gee?
G.
It is G. Okay, all right. I thought I remember him G, but Brad is a church planting pastor at Delco Alliance in Delaware, just northwest of Columbus, and is on staff with Access Ministries and is going to be with us at the Essential Summit. So we're really excited about that and just developing partnership with you guys here in Ohio. David, it's encouraging as I go around and I'll bring you guys up. And I mentioned that culture, or not the culture translator, the what your Gen Z translator that you just talked about?
Yeah, Gen Z slang.
Gen Z slang, yeah. At the church that I was preaching at on Sunday. And I think that's the first time I've ever said Ohio Skibbity Riz in church service, or Skibbity Ohio Riz. Is that how it goes in a church service? And that was fun just to be able to say, like, go check out access.org and you can learn more about what that means. But you guys are doing a great work. Really appreciate you. Thank you for your ministry to parents in this season. Really grateful for it.